Hello everyone, I'm Babble Jonathan. Welcome to the Insight on Equinox Television. In this edition of the program, we'll be taking a look at the deepening Anglophone crisis and the Constitutional Council that was put in place by the President of the Republic, Paul Biya, and the members appointed. We'll be looking at the role of the Constitutional Council. We'll be looking at the impact the Constitutional Council can have in the life of the nation. Stay with us. Our guest in this edition of the program was among those who voted for the reunification of the former East and West Cameroon. He's a senior university don. He's a member of the Constitutional Council. Professor Paul, you're welcome to the program.
Thank you for inviting me.
Now, we start with the Anglophone crisis. Some of the detainees of the Anglophone crisis have been sentenced already, some to 11, some to 12, some to 13 years in prison, and fines added to the different prison terms. Others, like Manchu BBC, are still waiting for the final verdict. In the meantime, he has been declared guilty of terrorism, secession, and revolution, but acquitted of other charges including rebellion, destruction of properties, and the non-holding or possession of the national identity card. What's your take on all of this?
You know, for most of us who have watched and probably participated in the debate to find a lasting solution to the Anglophone problem, have always suggested and thought that the proposal by virtually every member of the Anglophone community has been dialogue and dialogue. And we believe strongly that dialogue can begin when the situation is defreezed. And to defreeze that situation requires the other party, government, to grant amnesty to all, and therefore make people's families and many of our people believe or think that genuine dialogue is about to begin. And unless you defreeze that and you talk about dialogue, it becomes, people begin to ask themselves, after you have condemned this, these are brothers and sisters, you have further wounded more families, the hearts and the minds of many. Because many think that before there is dialogue, we must feel that there is a certain climate of understanding, a certain climate that makes us walk to that table, sit down as brothers and sisters, and debate on the root causes of the Anglophone problem.
General amnesty for those who have been...
Basically for everybody. If this thing is going to dialogue is going to occur, my personal belief is grant general amnesty. We need peace, and peace can only be attained if both parties do recognize that both are wrong. And we come to look at the fundamental problems that probably divide us, and probably the fundamental issues that should unite us.
And as we talk now, Prof, peace has left many parts of the two Anglophone regions of the country. Many villages are deserted. Many of them have been reduced into ashes. And life has become just a bitter pill, just too difficult for the Anglophones to swallow, those in the northwest and southwest regions.
Definitely. If you take the region where I come from, I feel very beaten, not to hear about the the worsening situation in Boyo, in Bello, and in other parts of our country. Our founder, I think, the managers of our countries, of our civil society, should think twice. Hundreds and probably thousands of our children are not going to school. And giving an education is a fundamental right, which is probably being denied to our children. Let me use that because in 1958, there was a school boycott in Boyo. So what we are living today in Boyo, though today is more violent with the killings and the loss of life, which I really, like I say, it bleeds my heart. We couldn't go to school. I was in Standard 6. And they will come to school and beat us, beat the teachers, drive us out of school. At that time, it was the KNDP that used the school boycott to be able to destabilize and dislodge KNC. And I tell you, brother, our school had at least 400, the boys' schools had at least 400 kids. The girls' school had about 300. So you had virtually 700 kids in that school when the school boycott broke out in '58. Do you know how many of us remained in school? Barely 30. I was in Standard 6. And if I didn't go to school, my parents insisted that I had to go to school. They didn't know how to read and write. And if I didn't go to school that year, I would never have gone. I would never have been where I am. I would never have gone to Sase College. So it was a fundamental right which belonged to me, which my parents insisted I had to. They themselves didn't know how to read and write. So what I'm saying is that the continuous escalation of the situation in our two provinces has tremendous consequences on the social, on the educational, on the economic, and name it. And therefore, this emphasis on dialogue becomes essentially important. And all we are saying, let everybody's heart soften so that the children of the family come together and look at the fundamental problems that probably divide them.
Prof, I earlier indicated that you were among those who voted for the reunification of the former East and West Cameroon more than 5 decades down memory lane. When you look at what is happening in Cameroon today, when you look at the state of the nation today, do you have regrets for having voted for the reunification of the two Cameroons?
I don't think one fundamental thing that we Anglophones at that time was we were Southern Cameroonians and we had our own East Cameroonians. Voting for us to come together was reuniting ourselves. And we believed strongly that we were going to build a great nation. And probably at that time we became the symbol of the unity of Africa. Because which country on the continent where the two major international cultures, English, French, were pulling themselves together? It was only Cameroon. And for Cameroon to have produced two secretary generals of the Organizations of African Unity was a recognition that Cameroon was demonstrating the way Africa ought to go. And I think today leaders, African leaders, regret that the fundamental principles of the Casablanca bloc was torpedoed by the Monrovia group. Because the Casablanca bloc, made up of virtually 7 independent countries, stood for the creation of a United States of Africa with one government and probably one command. And by the time they arrived in Monrovia in 1961, other countries had become independent, and they didn't want that. And by the time they met in Lagos, the unity of our continent was completely out of the window. If you transpose that to Cameroon, and we, those who were voting in 1961, believed honestly that we'll have a strong Cameroon. But today, if Muna and Foncha, who attended both the first and the second all-Anglophone country, were able to stand up and say mea culpa, was an admission that things didn't go the way they wanted. Meaning that the unity and the consolidation of a dream had gone wrong.
And that is where we are.
And that is where we are. And what the younger people, because the guys who are in the forefront today are our own children. They're in their 35s. They were not there when 61 plebiscite took place. That dream of having a strong Cameroon can never be destroyed.
And that is why today you're calling for you're calling on the authorities that be to go to the root of the matter.
Exactly. And that is why I say if you want to deal with the effects, go to the roots of the matters. And the only way to do it is sit around the table and talk like brothers and sisters.
Okay, Prof, we're going to take a short break. Time for us to take a look at what the newspapers reported this week. The press review compiled by Smanjikan Gabriel.
The attack on Southwest Governor en route to Lebialem for the installation of the SDO, the appearance of the Anglophone detainees in court, and the start of the second legislative year in Cameroon's upper house were some of the key stories reported by newspapers this week. About the attack on Bernard Okalia-Bilai's convoy, the Star captioned Southwest Governor thus Ambazonian as he braves the odds and installed administrators under tight security in Lebialem's headquarters that was deserted. The Guardian Post reported that Southwest Governor cheated death as Ambazonian fighters attacked convoy. Eden newspaper says gun battles overshadow Lebialem SDO's installation, and the Sun described it as Southwest Governor braves bullet to install Lebialem's SDO. Still within the context of the Anglophone crisis, the Sun took readers inside Bello War Zone with decomposing corpses littered around town, schools, public offices and shops remained closed. The Guardian Post reported that United Kingdom issues 10 warning to Biya on Anglophone crisis, recommending urgent dialogue with Anglophone agitators, while the Post reporting on the solution to the Anglophone crisis says population charges Musonge Commission to bring Biya to the southwest, and the Sun reports that SDF is to visit Anglophone refugees in Nigeria in May. The Guardian Post also reported that gunmen attacked schools in Kumba and Andek, killed GBHS Kusala discipline master and chopped off student's hand, while at Andek, principal was shot dead. The Guardian Post reported that military court slams heavy jail terms on 6 more Anglophone detainees, while the Post complimented it by saying Mancho BBC's case was adjourned again to May 8. The Guardian Post mentioned how government lawyers press for heavy punishment on Agbobala, Fontemniba, adding that Mancho BBC and co cannot be standing trial while the outlawed consortium leaders who initiated the strike that led to the current crisis are moving about freely. The Horizon talked about the 2018 presidential election, asking what makes opposition candidates tick. And the Post said SDF is set to present presidential candidate to population on April 30. We conclude this edition of the press review in the Senate with the info reporting on how SDF wants Mfon Victor Mukete to be disqualified, but Mfon V.E. Mukete says it is a special committee which has the right to look into the compatibility issues.
You're welcome back. I told you our guest is one of the pioneer members of the Constitutional Council of the Republic of Cameroon, the institution enshrined in the 1996 Constitution of the Republic of Cameroon and put in place by the President of the Republic, Paul Biya, in 2018. Prof, how important is this institution to the country?
I think it is a very important institution. Important in the sense that it becomes the watchdog of the constitutional matters of our country. And it's a pity that it took that long for it to be made. And I think it's an important institution. And having participated in his first major exercise, the senatorial elections, I have come to realize how much or how important we are to putting this country back on the legal rails.
And I was going to ask you, you handle electoral matters for the first time, talking about the senatorial elections and even the protests that came from some political parties. You handled these issues for the first time. How did it go?
I think it went fairly well. It went fairly well in the sense that, we all sat around the table and we looked at the law. We looked at all the legal provisions with specification on that electoral matter, and we made a decision. And I think my own participation and the participation of my honorable colleagues really showed me that Cameroon is on the rail.
And all the petitions from the different political parties were simply kicked out?
They were not just kicked out for kicking outside. We examined the law. and we applied the law, irrespective of who those party leaders or parties were. We were guided by the law, and that is our role. The law simply says we look at the constitutionality of the laws of this country and the treaties and the agreements signed by our country or signed by our head of state. Take, for example, if the treaty on global warming was signed by our country, and that treaty took away even our rights to manage our own natural resources, we will say no. It's just an example.
Okay, Prof, we'll be coming back to treaties and international laws in a short while. First, the Constitutional Council, like you earlier indicated, is in charge of ensuring the constitutionality of laws of the land.
Yes.
Now, when you look at the functioning of the state, do you think that the Constitutional Council will effectively play its role as far as this is concerned, considering that everything in this country, this is not new to anybody, is decided from the top?
But don't forget that one of the rules, the constitutional provision says that we are the last stop on all legal matters, whether the decisions and the debate started in different branches of government. And if the different branch of governments were quarreling among themselves, take, for example, the regional councils fighting with the councils or with government, that the legal provision says when that is tabled in front of the Constitutional Court, Constitutional Council, is that our decision is final. Meaning that even the head of state cannot go against it. It is there.
All right, Prof, for better understanding of the role of the Constitutional Council, when you talk about ensuring the constitutionality of laws of the land, what exactly are we talking about?
Take, for example, what is going on now in the Senate. You know, in the opening of the Senate, this issue of accumulation, incompatibility. There's a law which stipulates that if you are a senator, you cannot accumulate. You cannot be a board chairman, right? Of a state company, and again also a senator, and probably having a function in that Senate. No more, you cannot. And when this were, we as members of the Constitutional Council, and if you read the interview that was granted by our president of the Constitutional Council, Clement Atangana, he raised the issue of accumulation, which we realized that it wasn't the law, but we found people who were accumulating. But we couldn't raise it. We wait for, but we can also draw people's attention to it. That's a typical case. And I'm very pleased that everybody that during that session, we sat and we interiorly, we as members of the Constitution, we are pleased that this is one of the things we as members of the Constitution have realized. There are people inside the Senate who are accumulating against the law. And one person stands up and draws attention to it. I think that was wonderful.
And talking about this particular case, the senators who have been violating the law by accumulating positions. They have been there for a mandate, and nobody said anything about it until during the opening of the last session, the first meeting after the appointment and election, that the SDF senator raised the issue in Parliament that we are not talking about it. But why has this violation been going on and nobody said anything?
You see, one thing is certain, that the opposition is also part of the watchdog in parliamentary and legal issues. The opposition plays its role in probably drawing the attentions of the ruling party to laws and rules that are being violated. Right? And during the past 5 years of the Senate, there are a couple of people who accumulated those positions, right? And now we have drawn their attention to it. During those past 5 years, we didn't have the Constitutional Council. The Constitutional Council took note of this accumulation and was probably waiting for the appropriate time to make its voice heard. And our president came out very strongly on that. Now, what are the consequences of those debates? Now, we are being told that those who are accumulating, they have to decide to stay in the Senate or quit. They don't go free. Because I believe strongly that if they were accruing allowances in the Senate and other benefits in their corporation, they have to return resources taken from one of those. They cannot go free. Because they were enjoying benefits and allowances in two organizations, which is against the law, because the law simply says you cannot accumulate. And if you accumulate and you got the allowances and the benefits of those, you need to return one of them even if you resign. That is probably the final consequences of those who are accumulating and who will probably resign.
Now, apart from resignation, is there any sanction for the 5 past years that they have been accumulating?
I do not. I can't say for sure, but it is true that the law was violated, and probably for each law that is violated, that is probably corresponding sanctions. And probably one of the sanctions is returning the ill-gotten taxpayers' money.
So now that the Constitutional Council is in place and your eyes are widely open on this matter, I want to put it that way, are you going to pursue it to the end to see that the Constitution is respected? Those who have been violating the Constitution should stop doing so?
Definitely. That's one of our jobs, to ensure that the Constitution is respected. There is also another article which probably nobody is thinking about, but we, you see, I'm a novice. I'm not a lawyer. The law that I learned is called canon law. I did canon law for 2 good years. That's all the law I know. But what I'm saying precisely is that we are looking, I always call myself in the Constitutional Council as a student. I've gone back to school and reading the Constitution and the electoral process, educating myself to be able to help the Constitutional Council, those of my friends who are experts, to at least listen to the voice of the voiceless. those who are not legally trained. Because sometimes common sense is not common. And that is my role. My role is read this, our constitutions, digest it, understand it, look at the electoral law, and see how we can help our president and all the other people helping to build this country together.
Now, apart from this case, which concerns the accumulation of positions by senators, the many other laws of the land which were in charge of ensuring their constitutionality, including the anti-terrorism law. Is the Constitutional Council looking at this?
I wouldn't answer it in the positive, but what I do know is that any laws of this country require that we ensure that those laws are respected. Let me quote you one. I hope that it doesn't become also a bone of contention in the coming months. Somewhere in the law, it is stipulated that people declare their assets of the Constitution. Before and after. That is, before you go into the elections and when you are leaving office. What happens?
This law is, particular article is not applied.
Has not been applied. What happens? The law has been there. But probably people didn't think about that. Or people didn't apply. It may be because Cameroon makes some of the most beautiful laws on earth. Because sometimes you make the law and you say that law can only be applied if there is instruments of application. If I were to define my wealth, to whom should I do so? The law does not say so. Right? So I'm only raising this to say, when I read some of these legal provisions, our constitutions, the provisions in the electoral code, I begin to ask questions like a lay person, like you and I down in the road, which is a reflection of a common person who has not done law, but is simply saying, this is what the law says, this is what ought to be done. What are the consequences of not doing what the law prescribes? That's a situation in which the council needs to be alert.
Now that the Constitutional Council is in place and there is the Article 66 of the 1996 Constitution that has not been applied up to now, is the Constitutional Council going to mount pressure to see that this law is applied?
I can't. I'm the one who, when I was reading the law, I discovered this. And my question is that those who have run an election, ministers have been appointed. Ministers have been appointed, dismissed. How many of them did actually declare their wealth? And when they are sacked, do they come around and say, this, I draw the line? Maybe these are some of the issues that the Constitutional Council will keep people on their toes in respecting the law. If the Constitutional Council had existed 5 years ago, we would probably have raised this thing about incompatibility. Probably wouldn't have been debating it now. If the Constitutional Council had existed before, you would probably have raised this issue of declaring your assets, right? Now, and that is, again, this demonstrates to all of you and I, lay people, common Cameroonian, that the Constitutional Council is there to do the work that has been assigned to it.
What are the instruments that the Constitutional Council has to compel a minister, to compel the President of the Republic to declare his assets?
We are not an enforcement agency. We are neither regulators. We simply submit our opinion with respect to the constitutionalities of the law. That's the way I understand. And again, we deal with issues that are brought to us. And once we have made a decision, nobody can go against it.
The President of the Republic?
Definitely, I think.
All right. Prof, we're going to take interviews of the week, and when we come back, we'll take a look at the role of the Constitutional Council as far as treaties and international laws are concerned.
The situation is serious, very serious, and the head of state is aware of it. The situation is becoming unbearable, and that is why the head of state has decided to strengthen dialogue by sending to the field this time around all the members of the latest instrument which he assigned to promote living together by consolidating peace.
The BBC Mancho case and the others is just a tip of the iceberg, and the way we function in Cameroon is we don't know how to solve problems. We run after the leaves and begin to chase people after the leaves, but we leave the root causes.
The DLM division had been complaining and crying about not having a minister. Now you have a minister. The DLM population were crying of never have had a senior divisional officer from amongst his sons. Now you have an SDO, whom I recently installed in Modemba, Njan Division. The DLM people, let me ask you after all this, what do you want? What's your problem?
This case, be it the Mancho BBC case or the Anglophone detainee cases or the Anglophone problem, is a very complex thing. And you know, when you ask a question, should they be sentenced or should they not be sentenced? What should happen? You know, there's no yes or no answer because it's a very tricky thing. The question we should be asking is, if all these people were transferred to an international court of justice, would they have the same sentences like what we are giving them? What any normal person should be asking is, if these men and women, children, boys, girls, if they acted like this, what pushed them to act like that? So when we correct that, then we will not have more children coming onto the streets and we're locking them up. Locking people up is not the solution.
I wish to use this opportunity to solemnly invite the elite, traditional and political leaders of this land of Leviathan to advise their sons who have been misguided to take up arms against the institution of our country and who are now in the bushes and hills to come out of the bushes and surrender peacefully. If they refuse and continue, the government will take its responsibility fully.
Do we respect common good? Do we work according to God's precepts? Do we know what justice is? So many of these things, you know, we would like to say, let justice be done or seem to be done. But do we actually know what justice is? That's the problem. So if you don't know what justice is, anything else that you're going to do, which does not follow the proper definition of justice, will always have problems.
The law does not permit you to be, first of all, be a member of the Senate. I don't see how you can even preside over a bureau, be it interim. You see, we are saying, I stood by the fact that Chief Bukete is in a situation of incompatibility which is prescribed by the law. He was also supposed to preside over this interim bureau because of, by dint of his incompatibility. And the law is very straight, very specific. If you are a board chairperson, instead of him giving us his resignation letter, at least to clear his face vis-a-vis the colleagues or the supposed colleagues, he instead went ahead to rule that will be concerned later on. How do you start presiding over an honorable house like this without being qualified to be a member thereof? On the edge, the Azure door, as they call it, it is improper for somebody who was qualified as a senator last time, presumably at the age of 40, to be qualified again as the youngest 5 years after. Meanwhile, there's somebody, a member of the SDF at Ngam, Honoré, who was profiled by CRTV as one of the youngest, to deprive him of that right. Meanwhile, he is yet to be 45. But this is somebody who was qualified 5 years ago, meaning that she was 40 5 years ago. So now she's supposed to be 45 and above. But what do we have? We have her again presiding as the youngest, or being one of the youngest of the provisional bureau. We say it is wrong, and the public has heard us, and I think you are taking a message that this is the beginning of wrong things, and we're not going to support it. The Social Democratic Front will stand and play its role to put things in order, to check what is being done wrongly, and if it is correct, we say we clap for them. If it is wrong, we say no.
Development is collective, so I'm going to work with all my colleagues, all the other stakeholders, so that we look for solutions for the problems that are plaguing, especially the Northwest and the Southwest, and also the Grand North. This is an opportunity for us to try to get together, put our heads together, and look for the way forward.
It is our duty to continue, if given the opportunity, to talk to those who have fallen into this ignorance and think that republics could be constructed in the air. In no way in the world has a republic been created within another republic. These are just dreams, and we believe God Almighty will help both of us, all of us who are disciples of the state and those who have fallen short of the discipleship of the state, to learn and come back.
You probably know that the surface area of Cameroon is fixed. It's not going to increase today or tomorrow. And we have to do everything, including mining, including having water, including building our houses on the same fixed land. So we have to have issues well planned, otherwise we will face the consequences tomorrow. We work to increase awareness and do environmental conservation in the whole world.
We create partnerships. And in order to create an effective partnership, we need to know that our local partner is as serious as us. In this case, we have absolutely no doubt that Ngaoundéré University is as serious as us, and I'm very optimistic about the prospects for our continued cooperation.
We've already had participation of lecturers of the University of Ngaoundéré based on, a certain initiative from Israel, which he has encouraged us. We've sent some participants to a high-tech program which they did in December last year in Yaoundé, and we've already sent 2 of our professors to Israel on the Marshall program. And through that program, we're already at the verge of moving on with some research programs which would link largely the socio-economic development of the region.
You see, from the tender age, you have those toddlers, they love playing with the books. When you give them books, just to get them acquainted with books, you give them the books. Some will eat the books, some will tear the books, some will, throw them, some will cry. Look at the pictures and cry, but they are getting used to the books. So we are calling on our parents and teachers and all the community to send their children to the library to pick up a book and read. Just 2 hours in the library will change their lives.
The World Book Day is important Because it spread knowledge to children and help them to read and to write. To spread knowledge to us children and to increase our education.
There is so much disorder in this market because as we are inside the market, you can see inside the hangar is empty, but people are there outside selling, which is not good. But all of them are selling outside there. But people are coming, they park their cars and buy outside there and go. They don't even know that there are so many people inside here. You can see the market is open. Let them leave the road and enter the market so that all of us will sell inside the market. It's too much. So they have right to block all those places because you cannot even have space to pass outside.
We have realized that the work has evolved since our last visit to the site. And we have given a number of instructions which have to be followed for the work to meet up with the delay which we gave to the CAF team.
Well, the works have advanced in all areas, not only the stadium. The stadium has advanced also in all its zones. The main structure is on track, and actually it's ahead of its program. The rain has not really hurt us. Actually, we've produced more in the rainy season than in the dry season, and it's on course according to the program.
You welcome back. The role of the Constitutional Council, apart from ensuring the constitutionality of the laws of the land, is also to ensure the constitutionality or the respect of treaties and international agreements signed and ratified by Cameroon. Prof, when we talk about international treaties and international laws, and you're talking also about the respect of the sovereignty of the state. Now, how do you go about ensuring that treaties and international laws do not violate the country's sovereignty when we know the strength of Western countries who have been indirectly imposing lots of things on African nations like Cameroon?
You're addressing the question to the wrong person. I'm not an unconstitutional lawyer. But let me say what an ordinary citizen with some knowledge would address. Take, for example, the United Nations human rights. That's an international body of laws, right? Right? And Cameroon must. If Cameroon did endorse that at the beginning, it must follow it now. You cannot say the international, the human rights that are laid down by the United Nations, which empowers women to regulate their fertility, that you come to Cameroon and say, no, you cannot, woman, regulate your fertility. It is me, the state. That's not right. You know what I mean? Is that the international law is made probably based on what we call the natural law. The natural and divine law, which pieces out the essentials that all humans on this planet Earth must follow.
So what is the role of the Constitutional Council as far as treaties and international laws are concerned?
If there are treaties that violate some of our basic, how would I say, I cited you a treaty. I cited you, take for example the environmental law, which talks about global warming and whatever, where probably people, the rights of people to exploit some of their basic resources are denied to them. right? I will believe that the Constitutional Council will need to re-examine that, especially if that might lead to banning people from living, from nutrition, the exploitation of basic natural resources that enhances their existence and living. Probably we would have to reflect on that. But on the whole, what this is simply saying is that the international law exists, but that the international law is done within the framework of the natural and divine law. But anything that goes against our basic human nature or our basic human demands is what the Constitutional Council should stand up and fight for.
All right, Prof. After your appointment as member of the Constitutional Council, you resigned from party politics. Why did you resign?
My resignation from my party, the SDF, was to ensure that I approach my job as a member of the Constitutional Council with neutrality and impartiality. That my decision, my participation is not influenced by my party policy. I also resign. Again, this is cumulation again, because I was the shadow cabinet minister responsible for sports and youth development. I can't cumulate those. So I had to resign. And my party policy at the time, or my former party policy at the time, require a certain amount of behavior on my part. And let me also indicate to you that in the SDF party, when you are appointed a shadow cabinet minister, you declare your wealth. We were already practicing what we just discussed. You list all your assets, and that is what I did. And again, probably this was in the light of the constitutional provision. So resigning from the party was simply saying, I am here now to serve the nation. I'm no more in here to serve my party or to serve any special group.
And you said that you're not going to serve he that appointed you, the President of the Republic, but you're going to...
I believe that our head of state is part of the Cameroon people. I didn't exclude him among the Cameroon people, because I said I'm serving the Cameroon people, of which he is the first Cameroon citizen. Should I go in there and name and say, okay, I'm not going to serve, I'm going to serve Clemana Tangana, Paul Biya, my Minister of Higher Education, who is a friend and blah, blah, blah. No. I'm serving the Cameroon people. The Constitution belongs to all of us. Right? I'm grateful that he initiated, he pushed this process to bring me where I am. And therefore I'm serving the Cameroon people. Unless he's not a Cameroonian.
Would you disobey the President of the Republic if he gives you an instruction?
To do what?
That is in contradiction.
I will. I will. All of us in the Constitution. If the President gave us instruction that is contrary to the spirit of the law that establishes Constitutional Council, we can say no. Because technically, this is the last port of call. the Presidency of the Republic can reach out to the Constitutional Council to help him reconceptualize or to reflect on some major national issues. You may ask if he turned up and say, Constitutional Council, please look at the Anglophone problem. We would do that with grace.
Right, Professor Paul Kui, Senior University Don and member of the Constitutional Council. Thanks for accepting to be a guest in this edition of The Inside.
Thank you for inviting me. I hope I've been able to share some of my feelings about our new institution. We are there to help reconstruct, rebuild this country, and we only hope that you people out there, the press, the ordinary person, should regard us as your servants. And we will do our best to live up to the call, which is serving and making and ensuring that our country and our legal process is on the right track. God bless.
Thanks, Prof. Thanks, ladies and gentlemen, for staying with us. Take the appointment for next Sunday for another edition of the program.